The rain fell like it was trying to wash the world clean, drenching the cracked sidewalk and the broken man walking along it, when a single act of kindness quietly stepped into a moment that would decide a life. A worn-out single father, pockets nearly empty and heart already bruised by years of loss, stopped beside a stranded woman on a dark road, unaware that the fragile mercy he offered would soon return to him in a courtroom where his future hung by a thread. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of doing good when no one is watching, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Bright Hearts, because stories like this remind us why humanity still matters. Ethan Cole had learned long ago how invisible a poor man could become. The world looked through him, past him, as if struggle erased a person's edges until nothing sharp remained to notice. Every morning before dawn, he woke in a small, aging apartment where the ceiling fan rattled like loose bones and the walls carried the stains of time. He moved carefully so he would not wake his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, whose sleep was the only peaceful thing left in his life. Her hair curled softly against her cheek, and in those moments, Ethan allowed himself to breathe, to believe that somehow he was still doing something right. Life had not always been this narrow and heavy. Years earlier, Ethan had been a hopeful man with plans, a steady job, and a wife whose laughter filled rooms like sunlight. That laughter vanished the night a drunk driver crossed a red light and left Ethan standing alone in a hospital hallway, holding paperwork that confirmed what his heart already knew. From that moment on, survival replaced dreams, and every choice became about keeping Lily safe, fed, and loved, even when love felt like the only resource that never ran out. Money, however, did. Ethan worked long shifts at a small warehouse on the edge of town, lifting boxes that strained his back and scraped his hands raw. The pay barely covered rent, food, and daycare, and when Lily got sick or the car broke down, panic became a familiar visitor. That car, an old sedan with peeling paint and a cough of an engine, was both his lifeline and his curse. Without it, he could not work. With it, he lived in constant fear of the next breakdown. One late evening, after finishing an exhausting shift, Ethan drove home through a storm that blurred the road into streaks of silver and black. The rain battered his windshield, and exhaustion weighed on him like wet clothes. He thought of Lily waiting at home with a neighbor who watched her late, and guilt tugged at him for every minute he was gone. That was when he noticed a car pulled over on the shoulder, hazard lights flickering weakly against the rain. Most people would have driven past. Ethan nearly did. His gas gauge hovered just above empty, and the thought of trouble pressed against his already tight chest. But something about the lone figure standing beside the car, hunched against the rain, pulled at him. Maybe it was the memory of nights he had stood helpless himself, wishing someone would stop. Maybe it was Lily, whose small hand always reached for others without fear. Whatever it was, Ethan slowed and pulled over. The woman by the car looked out of place on that broken stretch of road. Her coat was soaked, her hair plastered to her face, and worry carved lines across features that suggested strength beneath the exhaustion. Her phone appeared lifeless, and the car clearly refused to cooperate. Ethan had no tools, no money to spare, and no promises to offer, but he had time and a willingness to try. He assessed the situation with the limited knowledge he had, checking what he could, offering the small comfort of not letting her stand alone in the storm. When it became clear the car would not start, Ethan made a decision that cost him what little security he had left. He offered her a ride home, even though it meant driving farther than his fuel allowed and trusting a stranger when his life taught him not to. The ride was quiet, heavy with the sound of rain and the unspoken weight each carried. Ethan focused on the road, calculating distances and hoping the car would hold together just a little longer. He dropped the woman off at a modest but well-kept house on a quiet street, refusing the idea of any reward, brushing aside her visible gratitude with the same humility he carried everywhere. To him, helping was not heroic. It was necessary. He drove away with his gas light glowing, the engine sputtering just as he turned onto his own street. The car died before he reached his apartment. Ethan pushed it the rest of the way, muscles burning, rain soaking through his jacket, knowing he would deal with the consequences tomorrow. That night, he fell asleep wondering how much longer he could keep things from falling apart. The answer came sooner than he expected. A week later, Ethan received a letter that made his hands shake. It informed him of a court date regarding a legal issue he barely understood but feared deeply. A dispute involving a former employer, tangled paperwork, and a missed deadline threatened not only his job prospects but his custody of Lily. The language of the letter felt cold and final, and the idea of standing before a judge filled him with dread. He had no lawyer, no savings, and no confidence that the truth would matter.